Hello there. Great to see some folks here already. Hoping that you can see me clearly. I see Sasha here and Stelio. Baron, nice to see you guys. Hopefully you can see me and hear me okay. Monitoring this on another device. And, oh, there we are. Okay, all right. Okay. Oh. All right. Well, that was interesting. Popular guy. Okay, so today I want to talk about something that's, well, I try to share this with all of my students because I think it's really important to make things as simple as possible. And one of the things that I want to make as simple as possible is keeping our brushstrokes to a minimum. And it's challenging because the tendency is to get that little brush, that tiny little brush, and just start fiddling away and fiddling away and fiddling away. And of course, that's not a great thing because we end up with a fiddly looking painting. So I think if you'd been watching Stefan's broadcast, he isn't using a big brush or one brush. There was one that he did just recently, and using a larger brush than what you think is comfortable is a really good practice. And also using less colors if possible, because the less colors you have, the more harmony there is in your painting. Hoping that this will be the beginning of better looking live streams because I spent a little bit of money on some equipment to have better sound. I'm hoping you can hear me okay. And also working with a device that is supposed to, well, it's supposed to be more direct and less echoey, if that makes sense. Okay. When I disappear from the screen like that is when I'm going to comments. And I just want to make sure everything's okay. Looks like we're doing well, Izzy and Gallica's here. Great. Thanks. Thanks for showing up. So a couple of things that I want to say. I guess, I could wait for a little while and hope more people show, but you're here now. And I want to sort of make a couple of announcements. The first announcement is next Friday. So that would be Friday the 19th of March. I'm going to be doing a session with Stefan. For those of you who are interested, a lot of you know him already, of course. I'm going to interview him like he has with me, and we'll find out a little bit about Stefan if you don't know him already. I'd like to introduce him to the English-speaking world. And those of you who speak English, that's great. It's a bonus. He usually teaches German, so this will be a nice change for those who haven't talked or haven't seen him in an English-speaking environment. We talked together here in Toronto when he came to visit, and we had just a great time, and everyone. So we got along really well. We always do. So if you want to tune in, it's going to be at 8:30 p.m. If you're looking at the kind of clock we do here, 8:30 p.m. In Europe, or 20:30 in Germany or in Austria. So you want to look out for that, and we'll have announcements, of course, on Facebook and wherever we can do this on YouTube or whatever. We'll announce this. So this is just a heads up. And a chance to look at a bunch of stuff that Stefan's done over the years, and that's always going to be, well, it always is fun. I get to see a lot of his stuff in the studio, visiting him there, of course, and he's got hundreds of things and a lot of history and a lot of interesting things that he's done over the years. So that should be pretty exciting. So that's the first thing. This, by the way, in Canada, that's going to be a 2:30 here, if I didn't say that already. So 2:30 instead of the usual 2 o'clock live stream Fridays, it'll be 2:30 here. The other thing I want to talk about, I haven't monetized these live streams. I think it's really important to have it available for anyone who wants to watch this free. Especially, there are people who can't afford art classes, and they can't afford, to put out a bunch of money when right now there are a lot of people who don't have a lot of money to put out. There are folks who are suffering. And for young artists who, just want to try something out or see if it's for them, this is a way that they can do it for free. Now, one of the things that's happened, I've been getting requests from viewers like yourselves, wondering how much my paintings are. Is it possible to buy one of the paintings that I'm doing online like this? And the answer is yes, and I've actually sold a few already to people who have texted me or emailed me. And I just want to let you know that that's available. Basically, whatever I do here, sometimes they turn out, better, sometimes not, but hopefully they turn out well and they're interesting. If you're interested in one of the images of a painting, the first person who emails me or texts me, and I can just check the time on those, the first person who says, I want that, will get it, and the price is $200 Canadian. So you can work that out in euros. I think I don't know what that would be in euros. Maybe around 140 euros, something like that. But if you're interested and you're really serious, and you like it, that includes shipping. I'll ship it to you at my cost. So that helps to pay for some of my time, and it keeps this live stream going. Of course, I'm going to do it whether I sell paintings or not, because I think it's really important that people have an opportunity to view this kind of program. So that would be nice if anyone's interested. I'm not going to book anyone about this. I'm not running commercials, so I'm not monetizing things that way. So it's just something that would help if you feel like you want to do that. Okay, I'm just going to have a quick look at comments here, and I'm seeing lots of folks here. Stilio, of course, Sasha, great to see you. And my tone is not clear. Oh, okay. I'm hoping that you can actually hear me okay. Try and fix my mic. I'm wondering, is it echoey? Noisy somehow? I was actually hoping this time there wouldn't be any issues with my mic. Okay. Let me know if it's still a problem. I'm just going to tap it. I'm hearing myself okay, but that doesn't mean you're hearing me okay. I hope that this improves somehow. Okay, so I'll show you the image. I'm gonna share my screen and show you the image that the clay is not okay. All right. So it is the mic that's the problem. Huh. I'm not sure what to do about that. A second. I'm just going to try something here. If I unmute this, I think it's going to be probably get lots of echoes. Yeah, that's not good. Okay. sounds coming and going. It sounds very low. The old 8-bit days. Oh, that's not good. Okay, maybe turn it up like this. That will help. And I'm going to try another connection here. Let's just try this. Okay, and see, is that an improvement? I'm just wondering. Sounds very low, like in the old 8-bit days. A lot of people know what 8-bit days are. I'm hoping that's an improvement. Let me know. Because if it's not, I'm not really sure at this point what to do. This could be, it'll be like a silent movie. You have to turn sound off, which is not good. Okay, I'm gonna watch comments. I'll flip this over. I'll flip the image over here. Anyhow, I need to do that, so I'm gonna go to. And let's just look here. All right. Okay. So it appears like there's a broken cable. Well, that's just not good. All right. I'm going to try something else. You're going to lose me for a second. My apologies, everyone. All right. I'm going to do this. And I don't know if you can see me or not, but I'm trying to hook up a little different way to use this mic here. This was supposed to go easier today, not more difficult. Okay, let's see if that helped. Because maybe it's a connection that I had with an extension. Let me know if that's working better. It could be challenging because I'm going to have to paint. Well, the option is for me just to get rid of it that's in my ears. That's another possibility. Let's just see. I'm going to check your comments. Okay. I'm hoping you're able to hear me okay now. Let's see if that's working. Is anyone who wants to make a comment here? I can hear myself better. It may have been that extension. Because this is not great. If that's the case, I may just have to pull my headphones out if it's not going to work at all. And just hope that this is still going to work okay. I just put a brand new connection. Huh. All right. Well, that's not great. It's still switching between good and bad. All right. I'm going to actually pull the headphone out completely. All right. And I'm going to try this now. Let's see if there's a difference. Okay. Let's see if it helped. Let me know if that helped. It may even be the headphones themselves. Okay. Thanks, Angelica. Hopefully that's going to do it. So I'm just going to have to watch the comments to make sure that you can hear me okay. I want to share my screen here and show you what I'm hoping to paint today. Let's just do this. All right. Okay, so this is the image that I had posted online, and I'm going to paint this with as few brushstrokes as I possibly can. I know this sounds a little ridiculous, but my voice still has dropouts, but you can hear me. Oh, this is really not great. Okay. My apologies to everyone. I'm just going to keep going. I pulled the earphone connection out. And I'm going to do one other thing here. All right. I'm going to shut something down here, and maybe it will help. Maybe I have too many devices going. All right, so I'm just going to shut this down. And of course, I can't keep up to comments as well this way, but there it is. Okay, I'm hoping that made a difference. And if it hasn't, I'm just going to keep going. All right. Hopefully, when working here, okay, that seems to be a little better. Okay, maybe it was that other device. Okay, so what you see here now is the image that I posted online. It's a beautiful ocean image, and this is from England. And I've got, as you can see here, I've got an old painting, just like leftover paint. It's pretty awful. It's just scrubbed out. It's a painting I didn't like. And this time I also have a webcam going over the palette because I know some of you wanted to see how I mix my paints up ahead of time. So I'll show you what I have here on my palette. I've lined up the paint tubes that I use, and I could name them all. I guess I should probably. So I've got manganese, I've got cobalt blue, I've got viridian, I've got magenta, I've got yellow ochre, cadmium yellow light, cadmium lemon rather. I've got a rublev, which is it's call it Italian green umber. It's kind of it's like I use it instead of black sometimes. That's what I do. And then I've got the Old Holland zinc and titanium white, which is really lovely paint to work with. I like working with it. It has a nice firmness to it. So what I've done here is I've mixed ahead of time some of the colors that I think I'm going to need. I've got a gray, I've got a lighter gray, and a darker gray. And I'm trying to think, in my image about separating out my light areas from my dark areas ahead of time, keep my color fresh, because I don't want to have to be dipping into all kinds of colors to try and mix something up and make it look pretty. So I'm hoping that, see, with a few brush strokes, really, that you can get the major parts of what you need down. There's an exercise that I like to try sometimes, and it's kind of a crazy exercise, but you count your brush strokes. So if you, and literally count your brush strokes. So you start out, with big brush strokes and say, well, this is brush stroke 1, this is brush stroke 2, and so on. I tried doing that in a little demo for myself just to see how that would go. Problem is I started losing track of my brush strokes. And if you do one brush stroke one way and one back another way, is that like lifting my brush off the canvas? Is that one brush stroke, or is that like, 2 or 3? That's the question. So I'm not going to get into counting a lot of brush strokes, but hopefully this approach today will at least give you an idea as to what I have in mind. And let's see if I can do this. All right, so I'll just bring these two images up here together, and it should give you an idea. See, the format is very different. The photo that I have is long and narrow, and the painting that I'm working on is kind of, well, it's more rectangular, almost squarish, but that's okay. This is about trying to create something that has a good feel on the board. So I'm going to do the first thing I'm going to do is draw out an image that I think will work in this. Now, I find it interesting that these dark areas here, coincidentally, have these darker areas here almost in the same spots that I need them. Actually, Baron, I think it might be Cornwall. You could be right about that. Um, Sasha, you're asking if I'm using manganese blue. I am using manganese blue. This is Old Holland. It's expensive and it is rare, and I'm actually planning on phasing it out if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I really like color. It's a great color. Um, nice to see you, Andrew. All right, so I'm just going to get into painting here. I'm going to just draw it out. When I say draw it out, just take a little bit of a darker color so I have an idea where things are going to go in the composition. Sometimes I like to just get in and paint, bang, right off the start, without putting any drawing down. But for this, I'm going to try and compose a little bit of something so I have an idea where things are going. So I'm going to imagine a little section coming out here. All I'm using, by the way, is the rubric, and that is kind of like a gray on its own. And I want to look at my composition here and just get a sense of roughly where things are going to go. I can always correct things later, but again, I want to keep my brush strokes down to a minimum. Maybe this is a little bit of a cheat because I'm putting brush strokes in ahead of time, but this gives me at least a plan to follow. So I'm going to put a rock down here, put another one down in here, in the water. Now you may be hearing a noise in the background, by the way, which is some renovation that's going on in this flat, in the condo flat that we live in. So hopefully that's not too disturbing at your end. Sound seems to be an issue today. I'm hoping it's better than it was. You can let me know if the sound is improved. It's possible it was just this device that was running was using too much of my internet or something. I'm really not sure. And I appreciate the feedback from you guys. Now I'm without earphones, I can't hear a thing. So I'm just putting a couple shapes back in here. Do I need to be absolutely accurate to the scene that's in the photo? No, I don't. Because what I'm trying to do is essentially create a bit of an impression. It's funny because I'm using the shapes I see in here to help direct me. It's almost like in a way, using the shapes that are here to give me a proportion from what I'm taking in my reference. All right, what if I try and get further away from the mic? I'm going to move the mic over that way. Let's see if that helps a bit. All right, sounds still great. Well, I have all the visual technology. Now I've got to get my sound working better. That's just awful. Just when you think I got the right part, the thing that you need, it's giving me more trouble than it has in the past. So more expensive doesn't mean better. Okay, so that's a basic drawing right there. And I'm just going to get in there now with a bigger brush and start to place things from the background to the foreground. I'm going to share with my palette here so you can see the colors that I'm grabbing. I'm going to go from the background, which is the sky in the far distance. Just going to grab that with a great big brush and place that in the top of this. And this isn't white, by the way. This is just a very pale blue. There's even a hint of magenta in it. A bit of blue violet. But against gray, it really pops out. So, we're looking at relationships of colors. Okay. Hi, Jerry. Nice to see you. Jerry had a ton of trouble with my sound today. I don't know if it's sounding any better now, but it's been really a problem. So They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Maybe I should just shut up and do a picture. That might be smarter. Okay, now I'm going to go into my next color back here in the distance. And again, not getting into a lot of fussy brush. I just want to keep it simple and letting my brush find its way around the shapes. That's all I'm doing. And hopefully this thing will all pull together as I come down through colors. I say hopefully because every painting we do is a bit risky. You know, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. All right, I'm going to go for, I want to get some big colors going. Now, I'm not necessarily, I have been working from background to foreground. I want to do that. But I also want to establish some things that are going down here so I have some value relationships back and forth. So I'm going to put in blue here that I think should go in around the base of this blue that juts out towards the rocks. And I'm working with super thick paint, but it's clean paint. You know, I've painted at the time. And I get to decide on the composition here. You know, one of the things I always tell my students is that when we're painting and we're hanging our paintings later, we don't usually put the reference that we worked from beside the finished painting. You'll see that in the galleries. So you're the one that gets to compose, create something that's interesting. If I was painting a location, maybe I would try to be a little more accurate. I don't know. All right. I want a gray. I see that I've got blue that I need to gray down a little bit. So I'm going to go into that gray that I created with the Rublev and put that in place back here. Again, simple brush strokes. Count them out if you need to. All right. Okay, I'm going to go back to that sky a little bit and just address the top of that. That's one of the advantages, by the way, of having some fresh color mixed up ahead of time. You can go back into it and adjust when you see edges that you want to clean up. Instead of spending all kinds of time mixing while you're painting, spend some time looking at the scene that you're going to paint and decide what colors you would like that to be ahead of time. Mix those things ahead of time. I believe I heard that Sargent would spend an awful lot of time mixing, and some of the writings about how he used to work, he would spend a lot of time mixing, and then he would go in and just put the colors where they had to go. So there's something to that, I think. If you do know the group of sevens work, I have to believe that Tom Thompson did one of the same thing because his color is so fresh. So if the sound's really crappy still, you can just put some music on behind and listen to that and watch me paint. I guess that's another option. I'm trying to make what I see in front of me into simple shapes. without getting too fussy. I'm going to bring that lighter blue all the way down, right across the edge of this outcrop here. I can't remember, Jerry, if in our class at the school, at Avenue Road Art School, if we did the count how many brushstrokes you're putting down. I really can't remember if we did that, if I did that with you. But it's an excellent exercise. And right now, I'm probably using more brushstrokes than I really need to. I could be bigger and bigger with this. There we go. The other thing is, if you're going to be big and bold with shapes, keep the shapes simple. Keep your brush strokes down to a minimum and keep your shapes simple. Try and look for the abstract or the graphic quality, if I can say that. Imagine that you're painting an abstract and you're just looking at shapes. Something very similar to what I was doing last session, where I painted from an image that was upside down. And when you do that, it forces the viewer to look at the shapes and figure out what it is. And this should hopefully come together and look like some kind of scene eventually. Angelica, if you want to sing for us, that would be just great. Should be able to have a voiceover in this program. Just really so disappointed that the sound is not great today. I have to do some more research and figure out what's going on. I have to talk to Stefan about it because his stuff is always so clean. The sound's not good, it's a problem. You can get away with sometimes poor visual images, but if the sound's not great, that's not super. I'm going to focus on, I'm going to make this a center of attention so you can see what's going on here better. I'm going to go up into the area, into this hilly area that comes into the water with my probably the most second or maybe the most intense color in the whole painting, which is this orange light color. And again, because I've mixed it ahead of time, it's nice and clean. I'm thinking about the direction of the brush strokes too. I want the brush to follow the planes of what I'm painting. Even though it's somewhat abstract, I want to keep it, feeling like, wow, this could be a real place. Sometimes you have more transparency in some areas, and that's okay. Some artists paint very, very thick. This one is sort of a combination of thick and thin, and of course some of the color that's underneath is coming through. I'm going to push in some of the yellow that I see. It's a bright yellow that's in the sunshine up here. And one of the things that's happening, I've got too much medium in my big brush. I didn't clean it out very well, so it gets a little too thin. I want to make sure that my light areas are quite thick. So I'm going to go in thicker paint here in the light. If your lights are thick and your darks are thinner, that makes for a more believable painting. Because color is the property of light. And in the darker areas, it can be thinner. The Darker areas are, and I'm going to say this, relatively more transparent. So that's just something to be thinking about when you're painting. It's more believable if your thick areas are in the light. Now I'm using a lot more brush strokes here than I would. There's another thing to think about, and that is that when you have texture, you see it more in the light than you do in the shadow as well. So that's okay. Keep your textures in the light. If you've got texture in the shadow, shadows are areas that you just see less in shadow areas. Why? I think, Angelica, you're going to have to make a soundtrack and send it in, and we'll play it over the background. And I'll just paint and keep my mouth shut. That might be a good idea. I'm just going back in here, just cleaning a couple edges up. This is starting to have a bit of a graphic feel to it, really well. I'm going to just get a couple more darks going back in here. Really trying to simplify this as much as I possibly can to simple shapes, simple colors. There's a big rock that sits out on the water there. There's a lighter color on one side of it. But that lighter color is still darker than the water. So it's always comparing one thing to another. That's what painting is about. What are the relationships of values to each other, and what are the relationships of colors to each other? All right. Okay, go back into this area down in here and just start to detail this up a little more with a little it's a gray that I'm working with. Sort of a violet dark gray comes in along the bottom here. And because these are mixed ahead of time, where I could, I tried to harmonize the colors when I could. And when I say harmonize, use the colors that I have on my palette as few colors as possible in order to give the impression of what I'm painting. Keep your colors simple and let the viewer figure it out. Their brain work it out. All right. Go into this foreground area now. I'm going to show you what I've got going here in the palette as well, just so you can see again. I'm taking these two colors and mixing them together a little bit here, because I've got sort of a middle color that happens in this foreground area. And it's only when all these colors start to work with each other and against each other that we start to understand the scene. Of course, you know, I'm looking at this very abstractly. And sometimes you can let little colors come through from underneath. That's okay. Don't mind that. As you know. So it looks like we've got exchanges of music talent going back and forth in our comment section here. I'm going to take these two colors now and mix them together. Sort of a darker blue, but lighter than this one here. And I want to put that in this area, so there's a transition color. And because I'm mixing up, these sort of warm gray colors, these blues stand nicely. A little bit more medium in this so it spreads a little better. And in the end, this should have sort of a graphic feel to it, if you can say that. That's what I have in my mind. Whether it succeeds or not, it's always the question. Can we make that work? You only know once you've painted. It's always good to have an idea in mind before you start a painting so that it's just not a random process. I think it's always a good idea. Okay, I've got a lot of this covered already. I'm going to go back into this area up in here and bring that blue a little higher. I like when those kind of things happen. So you've got that texture underneath coming through. Sometimes I'll leave it, sometimes I won't. In this case, I won't leave it too much because in the distance and texture is something that's more in the foreground than the distance. And it's not exactly the right color relationship either. So I attempted to do a painting with 100 brushstrokes the other day. Just counted them out. And I managed to do it, but in the end, I realized that it needed maybe 20 more. So I did 20 more. And in the end, I decided it was an image that I didn't really care that much about either. So I just went over it with leftover paint, so I have some good base to work on later. Paintings are experiments. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, as you know. Nice to see you, Lonnie. I'm going to go back into this area here just to bring the land up a little stronger. Now I'm starting to see the color relationships that I need, the value relationships a little better to get a sense of distance. There's a nice sort of cobalt color, cobalt blue color that is coming through. Now I'm starting to mix some paints up because I didn't mix all the colors that I need ahead of time. But those were for smaller areas anyhow, so I can do this and start to build some more excitement, more color into areas that are closer to us. Still in the shadow. It's a fairly intense color for in the shadow, really. But this is where you get to play it. I'm even going to bring in a tiny touch of magenta there, because the magenta, it's like an alizarin. You see lots of violets in shadow areas, and not always, but up against the yellows it creates some excitement because they're complement colors to each other. Starting to get a sense of depth here. Always important to keep that brush clean. Just curious, does it sound still really horrible, you guys? I'm wondering if it's, if it's awful. Angelica, you're asking if the paint works because of the complementary colors. And yeah, it does add some variety. That's a good question. Anytime that you can get complement colors working, if you have pure complement colors, like exactly the opposite to each other on a color wheel, for example, sometimes that can be jarring, it can be too much. So in some ways you want to neutralize at least one of the complements if you can. So bring in a little bit of the opposite color to neutralize it, or bring in a gray if you want to. That works as well. Whenever you bring in a complement color, one that's on the opposite side of a color wheel, of course, you gray the color naturally. That's what happens. Now, here's a case where I'm going to take a little bit of that sky color and bring it in to areas like this, a little bit more contrast up against the foreground. And we may have some reflections from the sky this way too. So just see if we can have more interest in these areas here. Thanks, I'm glad you guys can understand me at least. Thanks, thanks, Andrew. Sasha, maybe if it sounds like a nice mobile phone call, then that's okay too. Because you know what? I'm used to that sound. You guys are younger than me. So it's just very strange that that's happened. I don't know why. Because I really thought I had the sound working well today. But we'll get it figured out for next time. I could spend an hour and a half, I could spend a day and a half to figure out how to make the sound work better. So it's just best to keep painting, at least for now. I want to bring some of these little lights into spots where they might pick up against the shoreline. Don't ask me why, it just feels right. It's an intuitive thing. I wish I could give very specific reasons for some of the stuff that I do, but I can't. Sometimes it's just, you know what, I think that color will work there. So it's painting what you want to see, as opposed to necessarily what's exactly in front of you. Now I want to bring some greens into this area here, because it is a grassy area. And let's break this up a little bit. Again, trying to keep these shapes simple without getting too fussy. And a little variety in a color. I'm going to bring a tiny touch of magenta into the green, which of course is going to neutralize it a little and warm it up a bit. So if I bring a little bit of that into these areas here, where it transitions into shadow areas, maybe even transitions into the areas, a little bit of that variety just helps, because you don't want to have everything looking monotone either. I'm going to mix these two colors together here and see if I can't create a little more transition between the lights. I'm looking right now at values. So I have this light area here. I want to have that turn as if there's sort of a refraction feel to this. Because that's what light does. It refracts as it goes around things. We have more intense colors, and every time a plane changes, I think I read this in Richard Schmidt's book at one point. Every time there's a change in plane, there's a change in value and a change in color. So that's just something to think about. I need to resolve this little area up in here. I need to resolve a few areas. It's a very different way to paint when you're looking at things in a graphic way as opposed to, say a realistic or you're trying to replicate what you see in front of you. But there's some power in the graphic quality. I like it because it's simplification. The people who are looking at this, they have to figure it out. So there's a bit of input on their side. They have to sort of look at it and say, well, I know what that is. I can see what that is. And for those of you who don't know the group of seven Canadian artists who were so famous, you can really see that in their work a lot. They simplified their shapes a lot so that it gives a sense of solidity and depth with those graphic elements. Each paintbrush stroke is it's more believable, I would say. Just put it down and you leave it alone. I want to get a sense of the water coming through here. Looking for shapes right now that make sense. Looking for areas that aren't reading properly, that just need a little more information. I'm spending a lot of time cleaning my brush out. You can probably hear that. I can hear my brush better than you can hear my voice. Just soften a couple of things up in here. Soften the edges towards the outside of the painting. That doesn't hurt. Keep your just to the interior. I'm going to bring some grays in, some lighter grays. The light is picking up some rocks and boulders and things. In a sense, it's almost an impressionistic way of working at things, because I'm looking at values and trying to get those to work. But it's less about broke color and more about the graphic feel. If that makes any sense. Going to go back and just smooth that a little bit there so that it feels like it's more in the distance. Less information in the distance, more information in the foreground. Gives you a sense of depth. And that color that's up top there is probably a little too intense, honestly. I'm going to highlight the painting again so you can see where this is going better. All right. I've got a lighter gray. If I'm going to have a lighter gray, I should have some darker grays in beside them as well. Again, dip into fresh color, try to keep it as clean as I can. Cleaning my brush regularly in between. If you're not cleaning your brush, then you're not putting clean color down. When I say clean, it doesn't mean that it's not neutral or it's not intense. I don't mean intense color. I mean just clean color. Just putting it in a way that leaves the paint to do its own magic. I have too many shapes that are equal in size here. So I'm going to go big and bold right there. Break it up. I like when grays mix in. This is a case where mixing it in a little works. Because if the values are right, then it all comes together. I'm going to bring a little bit more of this cobalt in. And again, I'm going to neutralize it a touch. Barrett, you're saying Facebook is with a subtitle. Does that happen right away? I've always wondered about that. I'm looking at a screen here, and some people are watching with YouTube. Just curious to know. Or is that something that happens after it's processed? I'm just trying to pull a few shapes together here. When you have paint down, you can really start to work on edges and soften where you want to. I'm going to go into a little more color in that yellow. Create a transition between these two colors. And let's break that up over there a little. It's a big bold area. It's a very different way to paint. You know, if you've been watching my live streams before, you'll see that I paint in a lot of different styles or techniques or different ways. Maybe that's because of my illustration background. We sometimes would have to make an illustration look like someone else's because they couldn't get that artist or they couldn't afford that artist. They could only afford a junior like me. So I learned to paint a lot of different, or imitate a lot of different styles, I suppose. But in learning to imitate, I had to do a bit of research to figure out how they did that. And I'm real thankful for that because honestly, I do get bored doing the same thing all the time. I really do. I don't know how it is for you guys, but like you really want to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. You got it down it's so comfortable for you that you can almost do it while you're sleeping. And I think that's very dangerous for an artist. I think if it's great if you have confidence and you know what you're doing and all of that, that's great. But if you want to grow as an artist, then I think you really need to push yourself into areas that are a bit uncomfortable or do things you haven't tried before. That makes a difference to your ability and also keeps you interested. It keeps it exciting. I've seen a few artists, older artists, whose work I really love and admire, but they would get bored with it and they get discouraged, and I know some that even gave up on their work. And I think it's really sad when that happens because this is something hopefully you want to do because you love doing it. I know this feels like a bit of a lecture, but I'm, I really think painting is just so much fun. And if you can keep it fun, imagine keeping it fun for the rest of your life. That's really something. How many people do things they love to do in their life? So, for those of you who weren't here before, I did make an announcement about next Friday where I'm going to be interviewing or talking to Stefan Nutzel, and we're going to talk about his history and his life as an artist and look at some of his work. It should be pretty exciting um, if you can make it. And of course, it will be available later to watch. But if you tune in and ask questions or make comments, that's always nice because sometimes, we have an idea as to what we want to say, but it's not what people want to hear always. Now I'm starting to mix my colors together more. If you're looking at the palette, so I'll just show you. You can see there's a transition of blues that are going here now. So it isn't all necessarily clean color at this stage, it's more analogous. Um, but it's at this point where you can have those little differences, those transition colors, and your major colors are already down. So that's okay. Right. I'm going to go back in with a brush and take a few areas down that just look a little bit awkward. This is one that I put in here before, and it's kind of a nonsensical area. I'm just going to make it more defined so it looks like I meant it. Some variation in the color there coming in from the side, sense of transition as it comes in, and I haven't used any palette knife in this image so far, and probably won't actually. I need to deal with this little island, these ones that are back here. They're just sort of sitting here waiting for something, a little bit of color. There's a bit of a sense of distance, and I think I take that color at the top out just a little further. Feels like there's coastline up there. And I'm going to bring this color straight across. So they almost join each other there. It helps to connect that area up top. looking for design, looking for pattern, looking for rhythm. Those are all things you can think about. When I say rhythm, is this a rhythm across this way? Is it up and down? Is it a combination of both directions of your brush strokes? And see if there's something that says, there's a story here that's consistent throughout in the patterns, in the rhythm. In distant areas, we see less. In the foreground, we see more. It's a good question. I'm covering more of the board. Yeah, it's true. The board that was underneath was just something to paint on. And sometimes I'll paint heavier. In this case, I mix a lot of color ahead of time. I'm happy to put a lot of color down. If I were painting outdoors, it's more likely that I would use probably less paint and use the textures that I see underneath more, if that makes any sense. Use those textures to help me out. But yeah, for sure today I'm putting more paint. It's a thicker painting. Thanks, Bonnie. Glad you checked in. It's nice to see you here. Bonnie has some of my work, which is nice. Angelica too. I love it when you guys are, supporting me this way. I really appreciate it. Okay, we go back into here, and that's like a focal point right there. Interesting. I'm going to tie these shadows together on the left-hand side, so it comes all the way down, and that makes it a focal area when I do that. And a focal area is where you have the greatest areas of contrast, and like I mentioned before in the past, the most intensity of color, sometimes the sharpest edges. So tying an area together with its shadows and its lights can really help pull a painting together. I think I could use a few more grays in here. So it's quite colorful. And when you have a lot of color, it's also important to have some gray areas to set it off, set those colors off. I'm going to look for a pattern that brings my grays down towards these rocks here. So I'm just going to do this and this. And that helps bring my eye down to more to the water's edge here. And of course I can pick up some lights. So I can do that as that happens. I'm looking for rhythms here. Really trying to find rhythms that make sense. Like the light is playing across those surfaces there. Maybe it even picks up over here too. Just a bit of warmth. Little brush strokes going in a way. It's more brush strokes than I'd set out initially, but I'm just gonna go with it. Sometimes you get into a painting, you have an idea of time as to what you want it to be, and it's very dangerous to just get hung up on doing it one way and saying, you know, well, I failed, but actually you only fail if it doesn't look good in the end, or you know, it's just horrible. You want to paint over it. Um, Trust your instincts. Let yourself give yourself permission to fail if that's what it is, and then do something with it. Learn from what you're doing. You know, how can I learn from this? Now, I'm bringing just a bit of warmth into the water over here, just a little bit, and it really stands out against the cool colors that are underneath. So the tiniest bit of yellow in that, and if I put it over here, that'll really stand out against that blue, and it'll break that big boring shape up over. And it's got a little more feel now, light and water. Okay, so now I'm looking at the dark areas, and I do want to pull it together a little more now in the darks because there's too much contrast here. Well, there's too much of a line that runs through this area. So I'm going to bring more color into it. I want to keep it dark, but I want to keep it colorful. So I'm going to bring a little more of the blue in to that shadow area and make it less sort of neutral looking. See if I can tie those colors together a little better. And it should hold that line a little better. So you can see there's more harmony. As soon as I did that, more harmony in the color. It's less punchy. Some colors should find their way into other colors, and there should be a sense of transition, and there should be a relationship of color one to another. And if it doesn't look right, paint it until it does. That's, you know, trying to keep it fresh. If it doesn't look right, paint it until it is right. And try and keep your eye working all the way through the whole painting as you're working. I think it's important to do that because we get sort of fixated on one area. You know, we're trying to solve a problem in one area, whereas really the problem is a bigger problem. It's in other areas too. So they're all related to each other. I need a couple of darks out here so that it ties in with what's going on over there. And I'm going to accentuate shapes that I see. I still want to have a path that gets through somehow. It should leave a path for the viewer to find their way through. And I've got that awfully close to the edge over here. So, but if I want to find my way through, I can just take that away there. I'm going to try that. Maybe that edge was really nice, but I want to be able to find my way into this painting. So I'm going to change that shape right there in order to do that. And because there would be a bit of a reflection underneath that, I can put that shape in there, and that will feel a little more believable. Simple things like that can help tie it together. Now, some areas in the background that are unresolved still. going to go back and put a bit. There is some light hitting this area back in here. So again, with just a couple of brush strokes, make it feel like there's light hitting here. So there's going to be light hitting back in there as well. And I think I can even put a tiny bit of light on this island area here. I'll hold that side. Looking at edges, making sure there aren't edges that are taking away from the whole painting. That's the problem. You get edges that are too strong somewhere. I'm going to pop a nice light area in into the foreground area right in here. I sort of feel like I need a little more pop of light right there to hold the water's edge. And maybe it picks up a little bit in here. Starting to look a little blobby. It's, you know, when I say blobby, like there's a lot of little going on all over the place. Okay, as long as it still remains cohesive all the way throughout somehow, it's okay. Go into the background, into this area behind here as well now. Just clean some of those edges up. I'm going to bring some of that really nice bright yellow down a little more. It's sort of sitting up here all on its own. So I'm going to try and bring a little bit of this down in this area. And you know, those highlights, you get attention. And that becomes a focal area as well. I'm going to pick that up right here a little more. And here. Really let the light grab at the top of that. As soon as I do that, it creates some texture and tension in the area where I want the eye to go. So this is an important area right there. And maybe it picks up a little bit there. Watch I don't get too fussy with this. And because it's picking up there, it's also likely it might even pick up a little here and on this one as well. So that puts that into the foreground. Now, I've got so many of those things going right now, all getting kind of equal attention. So I'm gonna, this one here, maybe that's too ambitious. I'm just gonna soften it down a little. It's okay. And this one here is really strong. Just knock that back a little bit. It's where I really have to keep a clean brush, because if it's not a clean brush, all that mucky color gets in there. It starts to, you know, disturb what I'm doing. Now I'm getting a sense of rhythm through here. It's working better for me. Okay. All right, I'm going to put this up full screen again so you can see that better. You can see where I'm at. I'm looking at it on and my screen is small, so when I look at it now, I see areas that, just kind of stand out, um, that don't work as well. So, for example, this area here doesn't have a nice transition between the dark and the light. So I can just take a clean brush, and this is where just a brush through that softens that. That's all it does, just softens it down. And against the water, I just want to make sure that there's a sense that it's sitting there properly. I'm just going to use a brush to soften that around a little. And it feels like it might be a little bit of a misty thing happening right in there. And up against the sky here, I just want to soften that back a little. So you can soften a few edges in the distance. Edges in the distance appear softer. That's just what happens. And maybe this is a little too strong here. I don't know. So now they're sort of more ghosted back there. The sharper details are in this area here. And I'm going to do something here. I have no idea if this is going to... I tend to do this towards the end of a painting, where I put a couple of big, bold brush strokes just to, create a little excitement. You see it sort of swirl up through here. And, the textures can be interesting when you do that. And it feels a little more like water that way. I'm using the brush kind of backwards. You'll see when I brush it out that way, I'm pushing it away like that. And it's picking up some of the texture that was underneath, and I quite like that. Now I'm working with the brush backwards, pushing against it, and letting it pull some of these colors together. It creates a bit of vibration, a bit of impressionist quality through that. Be careful not to sort of use one technique everywhere. So, there's a feel there, there's a feel through the water, it's a little smoother there. Just have a variety of brush strokes. And some larger areas for your eye to rest. Like this is a fairly large area right there, that big blue. But it gives you a sense of a place where you can rest your eyes. So it's not activity everywhere. When there's activity everywhere, then it starts to be, well, too much. So I'm going to soften this in a little more here. Just a couple of spots. Just make that feel a little more water-like, flowing. Painting across the surface of the subject so that it feels like it really is a surface. If I were painting down against that, it might look a little strange. And I'm going to go into this area here and create a couple of darks. Bring your eye down to this little point out here. This is where it's sort of like you're inventing the scene. And it's okay, because, like I said, it's an interpretation of what we see. I'm going to get rid of that little white spot there. Let that just kind of blend into the water. There's a bit of mystery there. Don't know exactly what's going on. It's okay. We won't have to tell the whole story, right? Okay. I'm going to soften things back here just a little more so that they sit back. Not too many hard edges in the distance or in areas that aren't important parts of the painting. And just clean this up at the bottom. And there too. So it's a little more resolved. And I don't want to brush everything out so that it's so smooth, it's boring. I'm going to leave some activity in the brushwork. And I would say, at this stage, it's pretty close to being there. I could fiddle with it a lot more and then, open it really, and with the freshness. And I don't want to do that. I just want to keep it really simple and bold. Get the feel of, the land coming out into water. Keep it simple. Okay, I'm actually going to leave it at this stage. I think, what are we, 3:26? It's like the 1.5 hour point. I'm going to come back and show you. Let's just do this first. So let's see. So there's the photo. You can see the photo, and you can see my interpretation of what looks like one end of the photo. And that's what the image looks like. It's a bit distorted, you can see. But anyhow, that's my interpretation of what I see there. Nature's more beautiful by far, no question. What can we do? We can do the best we can do and try and pull something off that looks interesting. But nature is just spectacular, and it always gives us inspiration. It's what it does. So there it is for today. Let me come back to you now. And just there we go. Just tip this up. There we go. So I just want to thank everyone for showing up. Those of you who actually managed to stay with me while I lost my sound. My sound is just awful apparently. So I'll listen to this after and try and figure out what's going on. Hopefully it's something that you've learned through this session. I hope so. I think not having good sound really threw me at the beginning. So again, my apologies for that. I have to figure it out. Again, next Friday at 2:30 and in Canada, anyhow, Eastern Standard Time, interview Stefan Nutzel. And it will be 20:30 in Europe. So you can watch that then. Should be entertaining, if nothing else. We have a lot of fun when we get together and chat. On my website, andrewjudd.com, there's an interview. If you haven't seen it, on the front page of my website, there's an interview there with Stefan and I, and that was a lot of fun. Check it out. And I hope today was okay, in spite of the sound. Again, if anyone is interested in this image or any of the images that I paint, just let me know. The first person who emails me or texts me, it's 200 Canadian dollars and 130 something euros. You can figure out what that is, and I'll pay for shipping. So, and it's free for everyone. Again, there's no commitment here. Please, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. It'd be great if you do that, because I'm really trying to build my subscription If you think someone else might be interested in this, then please pass it on. You can see this on YouTube and on Facebook. So I got some good news yesterday. I'm actually going to have a vaccine because I'm old enough to get a vaccine with this sort of crazy thing that's happened with AstraZeneca. And so I'm right in the right age category because of the excess vaccines that they had as a result of them not giving people who are older than 65 this vaccine. I think it's rather confusing out there. And I feel a bit guilty because I think that older people should be getting them first, frankly. But as one older person said to me when I was talking about it, just get it. Don't feel guilty. You're saving, well, you're not getting sick and maybe saving the lives. So it made me feel better after she said that. Stay safe. Really great to see everyone, and be well and happy painting. We'll see you next Friday. Thanks so much, and be well. Bye bye.